This is the Converge Podcast, brought to you by the Converge Institute. Each week, brilliant minds specializing in AI, blockchain, and fintech come together to challenge the status quo and empower disruption. Sponsored by our founding council, Nakusa, BankSocial, the Texas Blockchain Council, and the Universal AI University.
Well, how lucky are we today, JR? Longtime friends with JR?
Yeah.
How long have you guys been friends?
I don't know, 20 years?
A long time friends,
yeah.
right? How lucky. You came to our first Converge event too, didn't you?
JR invited me.
And we had Ken Hirsch, who was another, great kind of guy to kick off with. And now we've got Michael Gorton. I mean, my God, this is great. We had so many great conversations just in the past few days, and this is going to be a really great podcast. So I'm really excited to have you on. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, that's great. How did you find the first Converge, by the way?
John Reed.
Yeah. Well, how did you like it?
Yeah. You know what? I made some really good connections. And so people who come to these things, I would tell you right off, come to meet people because there's some amazing people here.
Isn't that the thing? And so let's start off with that because we started off, and maybe we can end with this. I know you're going to talk about it on stage a little bit, but for the people who can't make it here tonight, you said something so profound. It's so simple, yet it's so profound. Talk to us about the percentage. Who wrote that book? Was it in a book, you said?
Yeah, it's Judy Robinette.
Right.
Yes. She wrote a book called Cracking the Funding Code.
Right.
And in the book, she talks about the success rate of entrepreneurial companies. And nobody's going to be surprised to hear it's somewhere between 5 and 15%, right? But what they did was they said, okay, if the entrepreneur is smart enough to bring in experts and become part of a group, like we all know John Reed and Gabriella started the Health Wildcatters and Tech Wildcatters.
And Tech Wildcatters.
So
that's how I met John, by the way, was in Tech Wildcatters. Yeah.
So if the entrepreneur does that and they bring in the right expertise to help them, that 5 to 15% elevates to 80% success rate.
That is probably one of the most profound things for an entrepreneur to get into their heads. For somebody, I mean, really, it's not even entrepreneurship, right? It's really anything. I mean, if you're trying to become a great athlete, like surrounding yourself with other great athletes, whatever you're really trying to do in life, right, Michael?
That's exactly right. In the beginning, when I first read that, I thought, oh, yeah, that's because they're bringing smart people that have done this before. And in reality, I think it is because they are smart enough. It is one of the things that those very smart entrepreneurs do amongst all of the things. And you and I will probably talk about a bunch of them, that make for a successful entrepreneurial endeavor. But certainly one of them is surrounding yourself, as you just said.
And the earlier you do it, the faster you do it, the faster you have that success, the faster you increase your chances. So that's why I wanted to start there, because I think it's so important to set the mindset of go find and surround yourself. It's not just a cliche. It's a fact. Go surround yourself with the right people and you will be more chance at success. It's so amazing. Yep. Now I want to go into another thing that I think was profound that you turned us on to in your book, actually. And we've got a copy. We'll post a copy of the book and post everything in there. But we handed it out. Everybody's going to get a copy at the thing. And you talk about this test that they did where they have a study of people who are lucky.
Oh, yeah.
And people who are unlucky, right? Yeah. And they're trying to figure it out. Talk us through that, because I think it's so interesting. So
this is a British researcher, a real scientist, who said, I want to figure out why some people are lucky and some people aren't. And, we all know people who we think are lucky. And so essentially what he did was he took a group 100 or so of people who considered themselves to be lucky and 100 people who considered themselves to be unlucky. And he did a whole bunch of tests on them. And the one that's worth talking about is the one where he puts them all in a room, he hands them all a newspaper, and he says, I want you to count the number of pictures in the newspaper. And this was a British study. And so he said, if you get it right, I'll pay you £100. That's all he said. And so all the newspapers get handed out. On the second page is a headline. It's not a picture, it's a headline. And the picture says, mention this, or the headline says, mention this, and I'll give you a second £100, right? So not surprisingly, 100% of the lucky people, when they handed in, they said, well, there were 40 pictures. And by the way, there was a headline on the second page, and I want my 200 pounds. Almost none of the unlucky people got it. So, okay, what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
So now he brings all the unlucky people in, and he says, okay, what is it? And interestingly, some of them saw it, and they said, well, you gave me one assignment, count the pictures. That's what I did. And that is a mindset. The people who are here at Converge today are the lucky ones, because what this researcher realized was lucky people are the ones whose eyes are always open. Every room they go into, they are looking for opportunities. They are looking for people they can meet. They are looking for things to help move them down the road or help them move the people around them down the road. That's what a lucky person is. It doesn't mean you're not going to get cancer or somebody's not going to swipe you on the highway. What it means is you're somebody who's got your eyes open and you're always looking. And that's luck.
There's the saying, like, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I think that's but it's more about being open to the opportunity than being prepared. Because how many times have you been unprepared for an opportunity that came, but you took it anyway?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, look, anytime preparation is one thing. Sometimes we just go for it, right?
Sometimes you just got to go for it. It's really about the opportunity. It's really about seeing the opportunity and doing what you can to make it a reality.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So, you are the founder of Teladoc, right?
Yeah.
And that was the first kind of online only, wasn't it the first one?
I think a lot of people had tried before. And nobody had succeeded.
Yeah, you guys were the ones who made it everywhere all at once. Like we saw your yellow signs, right? That was the yellow sign ingrained in my head. Everywhere, all at once, you were everywhere. You told us about kind of the resiliency when we were talking before, and maybe this is not exactly, so I won't dig it out. You'll tell us, but you talked to us about a specific moment that happened, but how your team was ready, how they were prepared.
Right.
Talk us through that mentality as a leader, because this is really a leadership kind of mentality, right?
Yep.
So now you've got the right people around you, you've got an opportunity, you take it, but how do you cultivate that culture of making through whatever happens? Because that's so important.
I think success is a lot of things. One of them is resilience and thinking through, you don't build it by yourself. And so as you put the team together, they need to be resilient, but they also need to understand what they're fighting for. What is the purpose of their company? Why are they doing it? And why should they fight for it no matter what?
I love that, their company, because
exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, every smart entrepreneur, when they hire people, they give those people stock, because when you own a piece of the company, you don't leave on Friday or wake up, oh crap, I got to go to work on Monday, right? It is your company. But I think the biggest part, and especially with things like Teladoc, where you don't expect when you start a company for a state board of medical examiners to come with a sheriff and say what you're doing is illegal and you're going to go to prison. It's, entrepreneurs, we know we've got a little more difficult road than corporate America, but not that much more difficult. And so I think the story that you're referencing, and I like telling this in two parts. One is Leonidas and the 300, because everybody knows this story of 300 guys who fought against 300,000.
But they don't know why it worked.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Tell us. That was so interesting to me.
Why was it? So Leonidas, obviously, he wanted people that were athletic, who knew how to fight. But the one thing, he interviewed every single one of those soldiers, and the one thing he wanted was for them to understand the opposite of fear. And so, everybody's listening can think for just a second, what is the opposite of fear? And what Leonidas believed was, if you love what is behind you, you will not run, you will not hide. And every single member of the 300, with maybe one exception, there was one person in the 300 who snuck around and told the Persians how to come from the backside.
Yeah, right. There was that guy, but we won't talk about that guy. You got to do what you can to not have that guy.
But everybody else, I think, understood the opposite of fear. And there's a great saying that if you have a grizzly bear, a mom, and a child, I feel sorry for the grizzly bear. Because mama's going to protect that child.
Exactly.
And that's the love factor, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so how do you instill that love? Like what are the the techniques or the methodologies you use to instill that love in the people? Is it just finding the right people? Is it just making sure that you're, constantly culling away the people who don't have the love and finding that one guy, who's going to go around? What is that methodology? I've
never figured out how to find that one guy. You know what? I've had that freaking person in every single company.
It's having the other 299.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Do you find them? I think you inspire it. I think you teach it.
Wow.
As a leader, that's our job. Everybody's got it inside of them.
So you don't. It's not you hire a person, but they don't necessarily have the love for the company. Because Brian Chesky at Airbnb, he has this weird. He says he basically used to ask them, if you had an incurable disease and you were going to die in a year, would you still work here for that whole year? That's kind of how he tested. Do you love this place enough?
Yeah.
It might not be the right question to ask, but I like your methodology better, where you find out if they or you inspire that love in them. Right? You hire these really incredible people and inspire that love.
You help them get to the point where they are the mother with the child behind them and the grizzly bear in front of them. And part of it is they own the company.
Yep.
But I like building things that are going to change everything. And you got to let your people feel that also, because the inspiration drives so much. You can see it in people. I'll give you a really opposite example, and that is the U.S. women's soccer team a couple of years ago when they got the crap beat out of them. You could see it on the sidelines. None of them believed. They
knew they were going to lose.
Yeah,
right?
and they weren't inspired.
Yep.
And teams that are inspired, it doesn't matter. I hate to talk about the New York Giants because this is Dallas, but think about that New York Giants team that faced the Patriots that hadn't lost a game, and they were going for that perfect season. Do you remember that football game?
Oh my!
The Patriots would score, the Giants would come right back. I mean, it was a war.
Wasn't that the immaculate reception on the helmet? Was that not the?
It could have.
Yeah, I think it was the helmet catch and the Eli Manning threw that pass. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that was all inspiration.
They did great things. They were inspired.
That's
it's not
exactly
just
right.
a cliche. They were inspired to do great things.
And it didn't matter how many times they got knocked down by a Patriot touchdown. They got back up and won again.
And how crazy they had to make that, that jump in the air on the helmet, one-handed. They did greatness. You're absolutely right. Yep. Wow. So you touched on kind of we touched on all that. You're doing some really cool stuff or working on some really cool stuff right now.
Yeah. I think there's 3 companies that I'm working on that are just like that. They're so far out there that everybody on the teams just thinks, it's grizzly bear, mom, and child, right? And one of them is a company called Phantom Neuro. And this is founded by a medical doctor. They're down in Austin. And the medical doctor has figured out how to read what is in the brain, signals going down the arm to somebody who's lost an arm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And historically, if you have a prosthetic and it's a modern one, it's like a hook. Maybe you can grasp something and that's it.
Yep.
But what Connor has been able to do by reading the signals from the brain is be able to count, so you can say, hey, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the fingers respond. Or he can say, I hope I don't offend too many people, but hook 'em horns, or gig 'em, right? And that's the current version, but they're working on a version that's going to come out in a couple of months that you can type.
Wow.
And can you imagine? And remember that movie about 20 years ago where the guy goes, okay, download how to fly a helicopter?
Oh, yeah. The Matrix? How can I forget that movie?
And so imagine, in a few years that you want to play Mozart Piano Concerto number 20 in D minor, right? And download it so your fingers know exactly how to move.
Oh my gosh, that's my dream. Wow.
Yeah. So
Are they working on injecting thought into the?
No.
Okay.
No. This is when you lose an arm, people who have lost their arms can still feel their fingers, right?
Yeah, I know.
And
it's called Phantom something, right?
Yep. Yeah, and guess what? He called his company Phantom Neuro.
Oh,
so
just hit me.
Yeah. So basically, what he does is he puts a neurological link somewhere in the channel. So if you've lost your arm at the elbow, then somewhere near the elbow you put this neurological link. Wow. The brain is sending the signals down, and they stop because there's no more hand there.
Are they also making the prosthetic as well?
No. They've made it generic so you can use any prosthetic, and there are some obviously that are better than others. And right now, the neurological link can do 32 things. So imagine your fingers being able to do. So that's almost full range of motion.
Yeah.
It's a little bit creepy because the wrist, our wrist can rotate 180 degrees. Yeah. Well, the patient that he brings in, he can rotate, almost like an owl's head. It goes all the way around. You go, ooh, this is weird. It feels a little. So that's Phantom Neuro. The next one is.
How long have you been in that one?
Just a few months for that one.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
The next one is called Sensei, and Sensei is a 27-year-old. I mean, how does somebody that young get this smart? But he has developed a way to diagnose behavioral health. So how do we do it today? There's a 2-inch stack list of questions that you spend a couple of hours going through, and once you've gone through it, the behavioral health physician reads through it, asks you questions, and says, "Oh, I think you have PTSD."
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They're wrong 60% of the time.
Jesus.
Okay. So what David Zachariah, the founder of Sensei, has figured out is you can do this by watching the eyes. And so he's developed an app that is going through FDA. It'll be done with FDA next year. So it's right at the finish line, that shows images and watches your eye movement, dilation, blink, and the pulse underneath your eyes. And it is currently diagnosing at 87%.
Wow. Does it have any AI built into it?
Yes, it's got AI built into it. So that's cool. What's even cooler is, now let's go back to the base case. You've done this stack of papers. A doctor said, I think you have this, and maybe right, maybe wrong. Then what happens next? Treatment. Well, what's treatment? It could be
pills.
Could be laying on the couch talking about, that shoe that a spider was in when you were a kid or whatever, And how do we know if you're better? Right. We don't really know, right? Wow. But with the Sensei app, 4 minutes a week, you can go through a process and it'll say, are you improving, staying flat, or getting worse?
Wow.
And so now the medical community is going to have a tool not only to properly diagnose, but then feedback. Figure out, is my treatment working?
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And, that's something, when I started Teladoc, I never would have guessed that the number of patients getting treatment for behavioral health issues is now outnumbering the number of normal medical. So, I mean, I guess think about it. I can be in the convenience of my home or my office, and I can be talking to a clinician.
Yeah.
That makes it makes a lot of sense. And so, but the point is, from my chair, almost every single telemedicine company in the world will take my phone call. And so now I can help David at Sensei get the customer base by getting literally hundreds of thousands or millions of patients in one contract.
You could just plug them into the it's like a prescription almost, right? Oh, you need this, boom, download this, go.
And what telemedicine company wouldn't want it because it solves a fundamental problem?
Absolutely.
What provider wouldn't want it because it solves a problem? And what patient wouldn't want it because it's very simple?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, there's a whole bunch. I could unpack that. That's a cool one. I can unpack that one for a while. But the last one is probably the coolest one.
Okay, so now it's just so weird that I have phantom neuro and phantom space. Not related. The two guys don't know each other. It's just a weird coincidence.
They named it separately.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Phantom Space is in Tucson. Phantom Neuro is in Austin. The two guys have never met.
Wow.
But Phantom Space, the founder of Phantom Space is Jim Cantrell. He was the guy who Elon Musk called in the very beginning and said, I want to go to Mars. So Jim is the guy who put together the team that built those first Falcon rockets.
Wow.
And Jim later decided to leave, build his own company. And as SpaceX got bigger, they abandoned the smaller rockets. And along the way, what Jim Cantrell said is, we can fill that market, but let's do it with something meaningful. And if you think about Texas, our last guest here at Converge was talking about the power grid and how much energy we consume here in Texas.
Yep.
And he said very specifically that we are going to have to do significant upgrades to our grid
infrastructure
because of data centers that are getting built around the state of Texas.
AI is starting to, like blockchain and AI are competing for data and power. It's crazy.
And so we have these facilities that are millions of square feet that are consuming tens to hundreds of megawatts. This is really interesting. If you talk to a blockchain or an AI guy and say, how big, you want them to tell you, and you're thinking about all these computers and billions or trillions of calculations per second, but that's not what they do. You know what they tell you? How many megawatts of power they consume, right? And it's a huge number, and it's a big problem. The more AI we build, the more blockchain we build, the more power consumption. And so...
and people don't even I talk to people all the time because, we used to look at Bitcoin mining, and these guys over here, 10 megawatts, 20, 30 megawatts can power a small city. So when you say hundreds of megawatts here, we're talking massive amounts of continuous energy, right?
Exactly.
It's not a fluctuating type. This is it'll take it all the time.
It's running 724.
Yeah.
And so this is going to sound really far-fetched, but you can actually build those data centers, put them in outer space for less than building a data center on Earth. And now that should bring up a whole flurry of things that we could spend hours talking about. But let me just hit the bullet points real quick.
Hit the bullet points, because I agree with you.
So in outer space, electricity is free. Solar, the sun is always shining. Almost every satellite that goes up goes with its own solar cells. I'm telling you, and everybody who's listening to this, that within 10 years, there will be companies building solar generating in space. They will be microwaving electricity to satellites in space and selling it for 5 cents a kilowatt hour. What are we paying now in Texas? 13, 14 cents, right? Yep. And they will make tons of money doing it.
Endless energy.
Yeah, endless energy. Fuel is free once you get it up there. And that'll help all of the satellite companies, because right now, when they build a satellite, they have to build in the weight of the solar panels to power it. And in 10 years, it'll be microwaved from the large generating station in high Earth orbit down to all the satellites.
How cool.
Okay, so now we've eliminated the need for the power. And this $1 trillion, I heard $1 trillion of infrastructure, generation, transmission, and distribution lines in Texas.
Just Texas. Just for data centers. Yeah.
So now that goes away. Air conditioning. You can't put a data center in a big city because you can't build a 2 million, 6 million square foot facility in a big city. So you go out into the country, and now you're piping the power there, and you have to have the fiber optics to bring the data in and out. But these giant facilities require tremendous amounts of air conditioning. That's a big part of the electrical load. Guess what? In outer space, you don't need air conditioning.
Even the space, right? You have to have so much airspace to dissipate, right? You get rid of all that.
That's exactly right. And so now you can take giant facilities, compress them down significantly, and not have to air condition. And people don't realize this, but computers run on direct current, but the power coming into our house is alternating current. So we have to convert from alternating to DC, and you won't have to do that in space because solar is already DC. And so then you start saying, well, space is far away. What about
Tell them about
getting
that. Tell them about that, Michael.
if you're in New York City and you have a data center, it's probably in West Texas. What is that? 1,600 miles, right? If your data center is in outer space, it's in outer space. That's a long ways.
Is it?
No, it's 300 miles.
300
it's 300 miles. So that's 1/5 the distance, which means you're closer, which means latency is less. And the other two companies are unicorns. Phantom is entering a market that's going to be multi-trillion. We're talking about decacorns, tridecacorns, quad. Wait a minute. A unicorn is a billion, right? So a decacorn is 10 billion. A tridecacorn is 30 billion. And
quintecacorn, that's 50 trillion, right? Or 50 billion. 50 billion.
So, I mean, that's the cool thing. All of the data centers, all of the AI, you think about what are we going to do in space? Manufacturing of space, that means you have to get materials up and materials down. But with data, it all comes electromagnetically over the microwave spectrum.
And tell about how you get rid of this stuff. That was probably the coolest part about it.
Yeah. So I've got this 6 million square foot facility with computers. Okay. How long are those computers good? 2 years? Maybe 3.
Maybe 5 at the longest tail end of...
In your home, 5. In a data center,
2,
if you have
3,
a 5-year-old computer, you got antiquity. Right?
Yeah, true.
And so what do? Okay, you send in crews with trucks and they pick up all this stuff and what do? Sell it, trash it, put it in a dump.
Goes to
In outer space, it's a satellite. You put it in a 36-month orbit. What does it do? It decays, it burns up. It becomes a nice shooting star.
I love that. I love that.
My data center
You can track it, right?
Well, watch for the Phoenix data center. It's going to shooting star at 6 o'clock tonight.
Your system is migrating.
So you don't have to worry about the cleanup. The atmosphere just takes care of it.
How far away are we? Like, if you had to put I know you're aggressive. What is an aggressive and realistic timeline for when we see this?
Yeah. Well, it's already happening in a way with SpaceX and Starlink. Think about what Starlink has done so far. I was talking to a gentleman this afternoon who said he's getting 200 megabits per second at his farmhouse, where he never would have gotten internet before.
Becky drives all over the state and to middle of nowhere. She has her Starlink on her RV. Boom, she gets it.
Yeah.
You know what else? I just learned about this today. Hedera, one of the chains we build on, they're launching these payment systems into orbit, into low Earth orbit. So they're going to have the ability to have online all the time payment systems. Right? Available. I mean, I know internet and all that, but this is already kind of, to your point.
Yeah.
The micro versions of this are already happening.
Right. And so Phantom Space is going to start launching what they call the Phantom Cloud, which is the beginning of all these data centers, the interlink between all the data centers in about 14 to 15 months.
Wow. And where are you going to launch it? Is it going on SpaceX?
Well, we have launch facilities at Vandenberg, which is California, and at the Cape in
you have your
Florida.
own launch facilities.
Yeah. Well, no, they license out, but
But you have your own vehicles.
Yeah. So Phantom. We're building our own vehicle, and the guy who designed the Falcon series rockets is. This guy has got to be the #1 rocket scientist alive right now. His name is Chris Thompson. We should get him in here for one of your podcasts.
Him in here. This would be. I would love to go out there and see what they're doing.
Well, you should come.
I would love to.
So Chris Thompson designed the Falcon 1 and the Falcon 9. And so, no rocket in the history of humanity has launched as many times as the Falcon 9.
By orders of magnitude, right?
And almost no problems at all.
I know.
It's just
it's nuts.
These things
defies.
I know
it's like logic and reason.
But there's a fair amount of history. So Chris will talk about in SpaceX there was Launch 1, which blew up. Launch 2, which blew up. Launch 3, which blew up. And they were out of money.
Yeah.
Musk had invested every dime.
Last dollar. Yeah.
And, everybody was like, it's over. The show is over. And then they said, we got a bunch of parts laying around. Let's try and do a Launch 4 with just parts.
Did they do a mother bear? Did they do?
Yeah,
did they do
that's exactly what they did.
Exactly what they did. They knew they had to protect it.
They had those last parts. They put them together. Launch 4. You talk to anybody in the early days of SpaceX and say Launch 4, and you can watch their facial expression because that was what did it. Once Launch 4 went up into space, they knew they were now going to succeed. And some of Elon's buddies put a whole bunch of money in, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. As they say, the rest is history.
As Motley Fool says, they're now making stupid money.
That's probably a good thing to end on right there. They're probably making stupid money. Man, Michael, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. I know the audience is going to love this. It's a pleasure to have you in here and hear about everything you're working on and all your guidance and advice.
We can't do it without the podcast and all the people that broadcast it. So thank you for doing this.
Thanks so
Appreciate it.
much, Michael.
All right. Thanks,
All
Ron.
right.